Good morning and welcome to this month's Women in Local Government Future Leaders webinar, Meaningful Mentoring. My name is Catherine Carter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with Local Government Professionals Australia, the national body representing the 200,000 Australians who work for local government across the nation. We're webcasting from Canberra, which is Ngunnawal country, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. I acknowledge and respect the Ngunnawal people's continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and region. I also acknowledge and welcome Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us from somewhere else in the country today. The purpose of this webinar series, which is supported by the Commonwealth Government's Office for Women, is to share practical work skills tailored especially for women in local government, so we can see more women promoted into leadership positions. This month's topic is how to get the most out of mentoring programs. Done well, mentoring can boost your skills and accelerate your career. A well-structured and supported program can give mentors and mentees perspectives, insight and knowledge. Joining me today to discuss how to make mentoring meaningful is Jana Clyde, Director of Wisdom Learning, an award-winning registered training organisation that helps people and organisations to meet their full potential. As you'll see, Jana is passionate about the development and delivery of interactive and highly targeted training and places a high priority on results-focused professional development opportunities. Jana, welcome.
Thank you, Catherine.
Tell us, how useful is mentoring as a professional development tool?
I think upfront, mentoring is one of the best professional development tools you are going to find if you use it correctly. So I'm really excited to discuss what that looks like in practical terms. I think that a lot can be done with mentoring if you know some really key information around structure and engagement from the mentee, from the mentor, and also from an organisational standpoint.
Okay, thank you. One of the things we're going to do straight away is to put a poll up on the screen and ask the audience today to participate. So we're going to see what our audience thinks about mentoring by conducting this quick poll. The question that you'll see up there is, what do you want to learn from a mentoring program? And there are a couple of options there: new professional skills, new personal life skills, and a new job. So we'll give you a minute or so just to cast your vote in the poll, and we'll see where we get up to. Please click on your answer and let us know what you think. While those results come through, though, tell us, Jana, are all three of those objectives that I just mentioned, professional skills, personal life skills and a new job, are they really achievable?
Yes. Again, depending on the structure and the mentor. So one of the things that you really want to consider when you're looking at a mentoring program is, if say we look at my company, Wisdom Learning, when my business partner was naming wisdom, he found this definition of wisdom, which was knowledge coupled with experience, tempered by humility. And I really love that because I actually think it really applies in the mentoring world. So a mentor will know some things, they will have had some experience, but to be really effective, you need the humility to be able to look and share both the challenging as well as the good experiences really well. So if we're looking at things like, is it great within a mentoring program to talk about new jobs? Yes, absolutely. Okay. Because you look at a mentor, they've often got a broader lens, a broader perspective that they're able to bring to a situation which you as a mentor may not even be aware of. You know, Catherine, if you look at the sort of experience you've had in life, there's been such a range of experiences that you can draw from that, you know, someone starting out in their career wouldn't even consider that to be an option. So
no, it's true. I actually had a conversation a bit like that yesterday. Yeah. I think I'm probably about 20 years older than the person that I was talking to. And it's true what you say. There are lived experiences and so on that people don't necessarily anticipate, certainly early in their career. Yeah. Tell me, this is a two-part question for you. What makes a good mentor and what makes a good mentee?
So there's a few things. Commitment on both sides. One of the things that you'll find when mentoring programs go wrong, which I know we'll speak more about later, because I'm sure many people in the audience have had the experience that mentoring hasn't gone quite the way they'd anticipated. Real commitment. So when we talk about commitment, it is just not that spoken commitment, it's the commitment of time. And if you look at where we're at the moment, often individuals and as well as, local government, they're trying to do more with less.
Yeah.
And what happens is if it's not a priority, it gets shifted to the side. And once it gets shifted to the side, it's very, very difficult because there's a lack of respect then, really, a respect for the mentee as well as the mentor's time.
Yeah.
I think what also makes a really great mentor is someone who is able to lead with questions, not just experience. So some of the most successful mentors I've seen are really capable of being able to see the potential of the mentee and then be able to maybe map some examples to that, but not necessarily have all the answers, because that's not what being a mentor is all about. It's about actually supporting the mentee and finding their potential. As for a mentee, again, commitment, I think a lot of mentoring programs get this wrong when they're not mentee-led. So where the mentor is the one making the running all the time to catch up, it really should be led by the mentee, because that speaks to the mentee's level of commitment and enthusiasm for the relationship. It can be hard at times, but that commitment. The other thing from a mentee's point of view is, and again, this is both ways, building a relationship. It all starts with rapport. So to be a great mentee, you need to be willing to be open. But to be open, you need a safe environment. To create a safe environment, you need rapport, boundaries, trust, and that's developed over time.
That leads to so many other questions I want to ask. I'll just report, though, I think 94% of people who responded to the recent poll indicated that they thought the main benefit or the main reason for mentoring was to do with professional and personal relationships and so on, which is really interesting. I'll come back to where we were earlier. In terms of the relationship between a mentor and mentee, is it better that people participating in a mentoring program already know one another, or is it better that they're strangers?
I've seen some of both. Okay. So, and I think one of the challenges with mentoring is there's no one size fits all approach. So there's some methodologies that we use to get great results.
Yeah.
But with that methodology, it's actually about fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So, for instance, some advice that I was given early on is if you see someone who's done what you would like to do, that is the starting indicator that they might be a great mentor, because actually, again, having had that lived experience, and that person could be within your organisation, or it might be someone that you do know. The only thing I'd say with that is when it is someone, you've got to be really, really careful, because say within local government, if your mentor is in your direct chain of reporting, there's a real hierarchy issue there. How are you possibly going to share openly? Is your manager then going to use that information in a different way to give feedback? So there can often be a level of holding back. Now, having said that, there's a lot of managers that provide informal mentoring. So there is that real difference between formal and informal mentoring. And I would say a lot of people in the audience have had the experience potentially of both, but most often it's informal mentoring that's happening.
I think anecdotally, in my experience, that's probably true.
Yeah.
That's interesting. When looking for a mentor, is it better for a woman in a leadership program like the one we're going to be offering? Is it better for the mentor to be a man or a woman, or doesn't it matter?
I would say it depends on what you're looking for out of the mentoring program. So, for instance, if you are looking to break through the glass ceiling and you're at a particular point in your career where you need someone who has done that, it may be really important to actually get a woman, because you are looking to potentially get feedback and advice or thoughts on how that individual did that. However, if it is around communication skills and being able to present your viewpoint with a really clear sense of presence aligned to strategic outcomes, it may not matter, male or female. So you really want to start to look at what are the key things as a mentee you want out of the program before you're necessarily considering male, female, though I'd say, again, women moving into senior leadership positions, some of the challenges that have been exposed by other women who've previously gone through that process, it might be highly valuable.
Again, there are so many things I'd like to tease out in that conversation. It's so interesting. But we are going to have another poll question. So another opportunity for the audience to directly participate in the conversation that we're having today. So another poll, the question on the back of that one is, which mentor would you prefer? A female, a male, or I've got C, either. Male, female, either. Just while we're waiting for people to respond to that poll, Jana, how can someone going into a mentoring program nominate a preference? Can they nominate a preference?
Absolutely. I think that mentors, and again, it depends on what sort of program you're a part of, whether it is a mentor that as a mentee you're going out to seek yourself. I mean, at that point, I'd say you've got lots of choice. You can canvas who's around and the sort of relationships you'd like to have. I think, again, if it, we're talking about the local government professional associations mentoring program, and I would say what a great example of demonstrated leadership, actually stepping up if there wasn't a question and saying, you know what, I think for my needs I would really like a female mentor. I think that's a great thing to be able to do.
This is interesting. I'm glancing down at my I have a little iPad here, so I'm able to see how people are voting. And it's interesting. I don't know if people doing the poll can see this. There's a line that moves up and down as people vote. The one that's been shifting the most is female. But interestingly, of the votes, all of you that participated in the poll, 55% of you said either a male or a female. 36% of people said female, and it's still moving. But it's hovering around there. And 9-10% of you said a male. That's interesting, actually. It's interesting to me that people are definite in their preferences about a male or a female. I wonder what drives that. I suppose it goes to
it can be lots of things.
About.
It can be that you are looking for a particular perspective, or that maybe you've got someone particular in mind that, within the industry, so within the sector that you're considering that individual would be, ideal for you, or the requirement, like we talked about. If you've actually had a really good consideration about what you'd like out of the mentoring relationship, it may be better for a particular gender, potentially. It's a very contentious topic.
It makes sense though, doesn't it? Especially, I think it's my understanding in the local government sector that there's still a majority of males that are in senior leadership positions, and so perhaps it is people looking around to see the people ahead of them and, identifying those people. So how do you go about matching a mentor and a mentee? Is there a science behind it?
I'd say there's a science and an art.
Okay.
So there's two key components. I think a really important component is, first of all, availability. And it sounds really simple, but I have seen availability undercut so many relationships and so many mentoring relationships because there has been a misalignment of schedule.
Right.
And if a mentor and mentee are not available at the same time, there isn't actually the opportunity to build a relationship. Really structural, really foundational, but often a question that's missed. So note that down, because that is a big practical tool that you can use. The other thing you really want to consider is, what does the mentee want to achieve? You can look at preference, personality traits, communication styles, those sorts of things. We really try to match up experience. So if we have an individual who would like to be a CEO in a council, we would look to match them up potentially with a CEO, so someone who's done that role or has previously been in that role, because when we're matching them up, we're thinking, okay, what are the key things this individual is actually looking to get out? Now, sometimes it can be a staged approach as well, so it may be that mentoring may actually be better with someone who is a step who hasn't quite got to the CEO yet. Like let's just say they're a graduate and they've come into the council and they're really excited and they want to see the potential career opportunities within local government. It actually may be better to get them with someone sort of mid-level, because that is going to give them a quite broad practical perspective and maybe the next appropriate step. So you want to consider skills, you want to consider knowledge, you want to consider the experience that they've had, as well as what the mentee is really looking for out of the relationship. Now, to be clear, some of the mentees don't know. You might have broad perspectives to start with. You know what, I would really like out of this mentoring program to understand what career opportunities there are out there for me. Now, that's a very broad statement, but you may also get a mentee who goes, you know what, I am really looking to build my confidence in communicating or having challenging conversations with my team. Again, really, really specific. I would say, though, there's that line between mentoring and coaching, and you've got to be really careful that a mentor is someone who is going to not necessarily just give you skills development, because that can often be the land more of a coach. Mentoring is that broader perspective, looking at you as an individual, helping you work out where you'd like to go and the skills that you might need to build. So yes, when you're looking at things, the things I would be considering for those at home, just to summarise, I would be considering what does the mentee actually want out? The mentor, what do they actually have to offer? Do timetables match? And then I'm going to say, often you'll hear in mentoring programs they talk about personality fit. I have seen some of the best mentoring relationships with people who are poles apart, because let's be honest, learning is uncomfortable. And just because you like someone doesn't necessarily make that the best fit. Mentoring is part of being challenged, is part of is being extended. Now, the only way you can really do that is if you've got someone who sees you and potentially calls you on areas that you might be protecting. So, for instance, we had a mentor who could see that the individual they were mentoring was playing small. So they would often defer to others in group meetings. They wouldn't speak up. They felt that their voice was less valued or less valuable than others. And the mentor called them out on it. And now to start with, the mentee felt extremely, I think there was a whole range of emotions from her point of view. She said she felt a bit embarrassed. She was concerned. She didn't have the skills. But this mentor was particularly great at giving a framework to support that. So she went away and had a good think. He had a conversation with her to say, look, what is it you really want? Do you actually really want to be a leader? And she said she really had to think about that, because he said you don't have to be. Leadership, management roles are not for everybody. So really consider, is this what you want? Because you are this individual is sensational at their trade. Did they really want to stretch into that management position? Because we know we've seen many managers who had a great skill base who have then tried to move that into a management position, and those things don't always relate. But that is a great example of a mentor holding a mentee to account. Now, this particular mentee came back and said, no, actually, this is what I want. And they were then willing to step up. So when you're looking at matching mentees and mentors, the nice fit isn't always
I actually love that
go.
example. I had a conversation recently with one of my kids. Both my kids are at university, and this very question came up. I believe there's been research about the number of people who want to be leaders, as opposed to people that just really enjoy what they do at work. And my kids, one of my children was very surprised by this, because he was surprised percentage-wise so few people wanted to be leaders, and he thought that was very surprising. But it made an important point, as you've just said, that there are different places, for all of us, where we can all add value in different ways.
And if you look at we're seeing a big push at Wisdom between a change. There was a trend for a long time for leadership training. Everyone needs leadership training. Everyone can be a leader. And what's happened in that swing is that a lot of the basic management skills have been ignored. So everything from, can you have challenging conversations with your staff and call them on where in a really positive way? Can you value add to your high performers to keep them engaged with your team? Are you able, do you know the policies, procedures that you need to actually take best advantage and ensure that you're delivering best value within the sector? There are so many but a lot of those basic skills have sometimes, not always, but have sometimes now been missed because what we've done is we've moved the lens to leadership.
Yes.
And so one of the things, and at the start of a mentoring program, sometimes having a great L&D person or someone in HR to actually ask the really challenging questions up front. What do you really want? And actually dig underneath that a little bit, because it's really easy on a surface level to say, yes, I want to communicate better. What does that actually mean?
What does that mean?
What does that look like? What does that look like in your world? So I know at Wisdom we spend a lot of time getting to know the mentees and mentors to ensure fit.
Yep.
And can I say, when the relationship goes off the rails, because do you know what? Some of them do.
Let me come back to that. Hold that thought. We have another poll question now.
Yes.
So the question is, and we were talking about a little earlier about difference in seniority and experience. So which mentor would you prefer, an executive in my area of expertise in local government, or an executive from a different professional field within local government? Just two questions. So have a look at those and answer them. So while we're waiting for that, you mentioned again a couple of really fascinating things, and you used the term framework, which I think is, I actually like frameworks. I think it's the difference between a friend and something that's a professional program or professional advice. You also talked about you touched on briefly mentoring versus coaching. So I want to ask a question that's like this. What is the difference between mentoring and coaching? And another part to the question, how do you manage a mentoring relationship so that it's so that the mentor isn't becoming a de facto counsellor?
Yeah, great questions. So there's lots of schools of thought about coaching versus mentoring. So it's always a really interesting discussion. Coaching essentially came out of the sporting industry. There was a book written in the 70s, and it looked at what are the key things you need for specific skill development. So when we talk about coaching in our framework, we're talking about what are the specific step-by-step skills, and we know the learn, do, repeat is really effective. So practical, skills-based. So imagine you want to get even better at Excel, because I know a lot of people love a good Excel spreadsheet. Being coached on that and having that step-by-step information is really important. Mentoring really starts to consider the broader application of skills, knowledge, mindset, and there is an individual relationship that's formed, which comes back to your point about frameworks and structures. One of the reasons that we see a lot of mentoring not work out is that there isn't a frame and there isn't an agreement up front. So one of the things that we've got is a template that actually steps you through an approach. We also use a profiling tool. So you would have seen many, I'm sure, in your time. There's different colours, whether it be MBTI, strengths finders. There's a range of tools that are really useful, but essentially what it does is it applies a lens and a common language between the mentee and mentor. The other thing with the agreement up front is things around confidentiality, length of the mentoring relationship, because it can be quite awkward. You're imagining from a mentor point of view, you've got a mentee who starts to really love the engagement and get a lot of value. If you haven't designated things like, how often is it okay that you contact me? Like if we haven't had that conversation, it can be incredibly awkward. How long will this relationship go for before we actually have a structured conversation that says, hey, look, this has been great. So generally we say set about 6 months as an initial mentoring period. You can together make a choice at the end of that 6 months for it to continue, and it may move to a more informal mentoring process. But that
I'm going to ask you
commitment,
to hold that again, because again, I think there's a really important point there about boundaries.
Boundaries are essential.
And the relationship. But I've been glancing down again at this iPad. So the question was, the polling question was, which mentor would you prefer? I'm always interested by this because it goes up and down like that. So 62% of you said that you would prefer an executive in your area of expertise within local government, and 38% said an executive from a different professional field within, it's dropped down to a little bit, but an executive from a different professional field. Before we go back to talking about boundaries, in your experience, is there a better choice, to choose someone in your field? So in local government, people, there's a lot of specialisation. So there'll be people from HR managers to people delivering infrastructure through to stakeholder engagement and so on. So have you...
I've got some great thoughts on this.
Tell me. Yeah.
So again, it really depends. I can give you a bit of a framework for some things that you might want to consider. So again, it starts with, what does the mentee actually need or want out of the relationship? And let's just say, because we've done a lot of work with local government over time, and one of the things that I find really fascinating is local government has some really specific requirements that other sectors do not have. You know, the direct the closeness to the community, being held completely accountable by that community, living often within the community that they're in, and feeling quite passionately about making a difference. Like I'm really inspired by those things. Yeah. But if you have come in maybe as a graduate into the sector, you may not have had the opportunity to experience things outside the sector. So where it's got, would you like to be coached in your profession, or mentored in your profession by a different executive in a different field, it might be a great opportunity to open your mind to a world of other possibilities. Maybe, there is limited opportunity now for you within where you are to be able to get the growth that you feel you could get. So having that external look is great. And then if we flip it, within local government, there are some wonderful skills and knowledge to take real advantage of that. I'd say, the things you want to consider is this individual going to actually support me in getting to where I'd like to be? And there was a great study that was that I saw reported in Kellogg University from America, and it looked at, they were trying to work out how valuable mentoring programs really were. So they knew they were valuable, but they were trying to really understand, are they valuable in a way that can be repeated? What are the key things that you need to consider? So what they did was they had some really key things that they were looking for. They made a list of 3 or 4: communication, conflict resolution, and I think the other one might have been strategic thinking. Yeah. But what they also did was they had one skill from one individual that was not identified. So what that was, this was in the science world, was getting research papers published. Right. So it's quite difficult to get research papers published and then to get an award for those. So they wondered, this individual, if they had mentored others, how likely was it that those mentors were going to become award-winning published researchers? And what they found was that if you had been mentored by an individual who had done that, you were 7 times more likely to be an award-winning researcher. Now, what that tells me is that if you are looking for that career development, you want to start to align yourself with people who have done what you are looking to do.
So in fact have very specific experience and so on in a very defined sort of area.
And they call it tacit knowledge. So, it can be quite easy to step someone through. So when you are chairing a meeting, be there early, make sure you've got the minutes written, ensure that you have engaged, blah, blah, blah. That's very step by step. But we often know that some of those council meetings can be really challenging. So if you've seen someone do it really well, it can be really important to look at, what are they really doing? Because sometimes the mentor themselves won't necessarily be completely aware. Because I know I've been a mentor and someone goes, how did you do that?
Oh, okay. I want to hone in on that as well. First, I want you to, if it's all right, I want to ask, going back to the issue of boundaries. Boundaries. So presumably many mentors and mentees form relationships and become friends and take that forward into the future, but some may not. It's a defined period of time. How do people set up those boundaries and an understanding of the boundaries from the beginning?
So when we run mentoring programs, one of the things that we consider is having those conversations up front and very openly. So we've actually got mentor-mentee agreements that are signed by both individuals. Now it sounds quite why would you sign it? But there is something about the commitment that comes with having read through and going, do you know what? I actually really agree to this. So you and I have discussed that it's okay that I contact you once a week. And again, really get to the method.
Yep.
Is it okay if the mentee calls the mentor all the time?
Yep.
Or really, given the nature of your job, it's really important that they only text you
Yeah,
or that
yeah.
they send you an email so you can reply to it in your own time.
Yeah.
So having those things set out very clearly to start with are important. The other thing is giving the mentor, because it's really easy to assume the mentor, because they're so experienced, will just know how to have a mentoring relationship. And it's just not true. It's like when you've seen someone facilitate a great meeting, you go, wow, that was excellent. That seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And then you come to try and do it yourself and you realise fairly quickly, you know what, there's some real nuances here that I've got to manage. The different people in the room, when there's different perspectives, and how to do that really effectively is a skill. So we like to enable the mentor with a framework of going, okay, what sort of questions should you and shouldn't you ask a mentee? At what point is it that the relationship because to get the best out of the relationship, like I said to start with, you need to build rapport. Now, Robert Cialdini, the seven principles of persuasion, fascinating information.
Okay.
They look at how do you get the best out of a relationship? And in the study that they did, they looked at two individuals, when did they get the most value out of a relationship? And it was when they found something in common first. It sounds really simple. You know, if you and I are doing it, Catherine, do you like dogs?
Of course.
Okay, well, not everyone likes dogs.
No, that's true. That's true.
I like dog too. I've got a little dog named Bonnie. My last name's Clyde, so I find it hilarious that the vet calls Bonnie Clyde. You know.
Oh no, that's so great.
Now, it might sound like something really small, but we find one thing in common, and we start to build that rapport. We start to open up and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Now, what comes with that, and one of the valuable things as part of mentoring is opening up and actually like if you were my mentor, seeing me.
Which goes back to trust, which you were talking about.
That's right. And
earlier on.
Building trust, it takes time and energy and support. But we've got to then be really careful, because as soon as you start to look at me as a whole person, what you're going to hear about is you're going to hear about my kids. What if the individual you're working with has some mental health challenges?
Okay, here we go. What if in a mentor-mentee relationship, it just doesn't work?
Yep.
So you start and you dislike one another, you disagree, you're not gelling, big to little. What happens then?
Yeah, great. So I think that mentoring relationships can be a very vulnerable experience for both the mentee and mentor. And the first thing I would say is why? Why is it not working? And not surface level. When we've worked with people before, I've heard things like, oh, I just don't like them, or they just don't like me, or there's a lack of respect of my time, or there's a whole range of things. I like to go back to the underlying framework and understand, okay, did we miss something to start with? Is there a lack of alignment? So, for instance, we've had cases in the past where mentors have said that they've been available, but if you have a look at COVID, we've had a lot of managers, and especially in local government. I mean, I can only imagine the pressure that suddenly came on, where you are now dealing potentially with floods and other disasters, and your time may not be available. In the same way. So there may be a mismatch there. What happens if you get someone who is rude or a bit preachy potentially? So we get a lot of mentors that may take it as a soapbox to say, well,
let me tell you.
What I used to do was, and in that situation. And I think it's actually, you've really got to consider, okay, this is a really great learning opportunity. How could you make that relationship work? Because tell me, have you worked with people like that? And that's where that's where coaching can become really good. Taking that specific problem and going, is it really a problem, or is it an opportunity? And wouldn't it be great to end that relationship? Let's say it's not going to work as a mentoring relationship. Wouldn't it be great to transition that relationship in a really meaningful way, so that it's a positive experience for both of you? Because where it comes unstuck often is people are not willing to have the real conversation. The real conversation, which is, look, Catherine, what I'm noticing is that this just doesn't appear to be working. When we say we're going to catch up and then you don't show up, I'm feeling like this isn't important to you. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Now, most people are not willing to have that
Is
conversation.
that the most common problem? It's time?
Time, I would say, in 80% of the cases, like it is a huge issue because often people who are quite senior are often, not always, but quite driven, and they take on large amounts. Now, with that great drive, also can come a challenge for time. But again, not always. The other issue we have is a values clash. So that real sense of a mentor or mentee having a very specific value set that they're not willing to hear any different viewpoints on. Now that can be really challenging because instead of being open, and you don't have to agree, you don't even have to accept it. You just need to listen.
Listening is everything, isn't it? And it's actually really hard to do. I think. A new complexity or thing that the hybrid model. So mentoring that's not face to face. It's on a Zoom or it's done virtually. How's that playing out? Can you still have a valuable mentor-mentee engagement experience?
Absolutely. So there's some historical information where some mentoring used to be carried out by letter.
Oh.
Yes, this is very interesting. So you can imagine...
that makes sense.
Right. So you've got to be really so there's a lot of thought that goes into in a conversation when we're close to one another. Reading body language can be really, really effective.
Yeah.
But if you think of the core of mentoring, which is that extending relationship where someone is really getting to understand you and they're getting to challenge you and they're getting to help open the world up for you in terms of opportunity, possibility, there's so many different ways of doing that. And it can be just the right question at the right time that can open that up. So one of the things that I think it's really worthwhile considering from a hybrid point of view, obviously the value of having a system where there's a video where you can actually see one another, very valuable. Can I say in some ways it's bringing a lot of equity into mentoring relationships. We're doing another mentoring program for women in construction, and often it is the future leaders, but often those future leaders are at the stage of having small children. So for them to commit to something else outside of work time, it can be really, really challenging. So you've got the commute, you've got arriving, you've got doing the mentoring, you've got leaving. What we're actually finding is that hybrid mentoring model is giving them more access to mentoring because they don't have the commute time. You know, things can be happening at home, and we've been in situations where kids have run in and out. Is it ideal? Well, is life ideal? You know, it's about, is it better to have the opportunity for that relationship or not? So I'd say hybrid can work, but all the same parameters apply. You really want to consider, is there a structure in place? Have you decided, you know, what are some of the key topics you want to talk about? Have you actually started to build rapport? I think with hybrid, the thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't become transactional, because when you're not sitting alongside having a coffee with someone, I think that it's really, really important that there is an opportunity there to build a relationship. And often in mentoring programs, we've got specific get-to-know-you questions, and some of them are funny, but often what it's about is just gaining that access and insight to a person. The other thing I'd mention with that is, again, those diagnostic tools. We use one called HBDI, Herman Brain Dominance Instrument. The reason I like it is because it talks about preference, not competence. And I mean, like I said, there's many, many tools out there. We also use Strengths Profiler a lot. So as a mentor, it can be really great if your mentee is struggling with finding their own strengths and you're struggling to pull it out. But in our case, we often get the mentee and the mentor to both do the profile.
Right, yeah.
That creates a common relationship and I think also helps in a hybrid way, because if I know that you as an individual really need, I'm going to say, high forms of contact in a certain way, it allows us to design the mentoring program more around that.
I like everything about this, and going back to an earlier description, the framework,
framework,
which I really like.
Key.
Well, thank you so much for your insights today and for taking us through what a mentoring-mentee relationship is all about. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm also excited that we're going to be working with you going forward,
Yeah.
which we'll come to. Thank you also to everyone who participated today and who responded to the polling questions. That was quite insightful and very useful, so thank you to everyone about that. But before we close, some big news from us. I'm really delighted to announce that together Wisdom Learning and Local Government Professionals Australia are going to administer a fully supported and guided mentoring program designed especially for emerging women leaders in local government. There will be one opportunity available in every state and in the Northern Territory. We'll announce the selection criteria and judging process over the next few weeks. But if you would like to register your interest and ensure you get all the information, would you please email us? Now, the email address is women, WOMEN, women at LG, which is LG Professionals Australia, all one word, .org.au. So I'll say that again. It's women at LG Professionals Australia, one word, .org.au. If you hadn't made a note or written it down, just look at our website or get in touch with us via the email link that you have, and we'll respond to you as quickly as we can. Jana, what's going to make this particular mentoring program so valuable for women in local government?
At Wisdom, we are all about real results, so practical application in the workplace. We've done programs like this time and time again, and what I'm so excited about working with this particular sector, because local government, there's so much opportunity here. It is going to be practical and based in real local government examples, and it's going to be guided. So I think that if you need support, structure, you're going to be able to get that as part of the program.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure.
Me personally and our team, we're genuinely really excited about this program and about working with you going forward.
Very excited.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Before we let everyone go, we do have a final poll question. This is one that we'll ask at the conclusion of all of the webinars we run. We run them every month. The poll question is, did you learn today new career or leadership information in today's webinar? If you could, as with previous polls, just indicate your preference. I can see that coming through. This is 100% of you so far said you learnt something new. So that's terrific. Thank you. As mentioned, we ask this question after every webinar because we want to stay very focused on providing practical advice to everyone that joins in when we invite you to invest 50 minutes in your future on the first Tuesday of every month. If you'd like to suggest a topic that you'd like us to discuss during one of the webinars, please get in touch with us. You can do that via links on Facebook or LinkedIn, social media, to send us your suggestions. You can also email us. You can also use our new email address, women@lgprofessionalsaustralia.org.au. We'll be posting today's webinar on our social media channels, so please share it with colleagues and friends. You're very welcome to do that. And thank you again, as always, for your participation. Again, my name is Catherine Carter, and I look forward to seeing you again next month.